Welcome back to the show. I got Dallin Hanchett from Juneau back on here to talk some more waterfowl hunting. Thanks for being on here, man.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
So Dallin's kind of been one of my go-to waterfowl guys. I've always had a lot of questions for him. So now I gotta figure out. I know that Alaska holds a lot of epic hunts for a lot of people, and you went to Cold Bay, and I have an
Did.
inkling about certain species that are super, super cool. Understood the importance of the harlequin and how coveted that is. But what was it about Cold Bay and the emperor goose that made you want to travel all the way to? Is that on? Is that in the Aleutian chain,
It
or is
is.
that
It's
like the
right
last
at the
tip of
beginning of the Aleutians.
Okay, so it's like the last tip of the mainland or the first island?
It's like the tip of the mainland, more or less.
Sweet. So tell me about the emperor goose and where does it rank as far as to like a novice a duck hunter, goose hunter? What do how huge is this one?
Well, so the big thing is a lot of people still don't know what the emperor goose is. If a lot of the extreme waterfowl guys, know about it, but the big reason to that is because the emperor goose season was closed for over 30 years. If I'm correct in my knowledge, it was closed for a while just due to low numbers, and with conservation efforts and whatnot, they finally got it up to what they are considering to be a huntable level. And so, I mean, I'm pretty serious waterfowl. I've been hunting for 15, almost 16 years now, and a few years ago when they opened it back up, it kind of popped up on my radar. I was like, oh, hey, look, that's kind of cool. Never thought that I'd actually be able to do it because, as a non-resident, they only offer, I think, 25 tags a year.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of like the pinnacle of everything that I've done so far, kind of like led up to this experience.
So how'd you get the tag?
So for Alaska residents, any Alaska resident can go get a tag from any Fish and Game office. But with that being said, there still is a quota on the bird. The last 2 years that the hunt was open, there was a 1,000 bird quota. This year, they did move that quota down to 500. So once that objective is hit and that quota is met, they close the hunt statewide.
Gotcha. I want to go back to what you said, something about the fact that it was closed, but through conservation now it's open. A lot of people who think that when you're protecting a species, that means you never hunt it again. But it's largely, I'm assuming that Ducks Unlimited and some other conservation organizations are the ones who put so much money into protecting the thing, bringing it back to the point where now there's sustainable levels to be able to hunt them again. So a lot of times it's hunters that are supplying the actual money toward these conservation efforts rather than people who don't give any money and just don't think you should hunt ever again.
Absolutely, and that's a big thing just with hunting in general that a lot of people just don't understand is there are very few hunters that aren't conservationists. Most of your tags and your licenses, specifically in waterfowl, you've got your federal duck stamp. Alaska does a state duck stamp. If I'm not mistaken, most of that funding actually goes towards conservation efforts. It's not to line people's pockets or just make another buck on you. It's actual your money's supposed to be going towards conservation, and that's a big thing that a lot of people. It's either they don't know or they don't care enough to know that hunters are first and foremost generally conservationists.
Yeah, I think the next step too, and this is what I've been thinking of lately, that it's your money goes toward conservation when you're buying the license, but also taking that next step and actually looking at these specific organizations. I really like Ducks Unlimited. I just like the magazine is a quality magazine. There's a lot of money that goes into actual projects. You can see where the money is going, which is great. And also a big fan of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just, it seems like there's a tangible thing that you get from it rather than I'm just throwing money at this this conservation organization that sends me a magazine with a whole bunch of trophy photos or something like that, and that this project was done with these funds and this is how it's impacting you. So I really like those two specific foundations.
Absolutely. There's quite a few different conservation groups. I myself, I'm in with. I'm a member of Ducks Unlimited. I was a member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I think I let my membership lapse, but and even if it is just being a member, that's at least something forward. But with those specific two organizations, there are always opportunities that you, as a hunter and a conservationist, are always that they're always having events and stuff that you can actually go and more or less put your money where your mouth is and go try to do something, or you can see that come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right, so we got enough emperor geese are back to be able to be hunted, and that is why you headed out west. You're so far west, you were almost east. So how did you get to Anchorage? How long from Anchorage down to Cold Bay, and how long did that take? Well, Juneau.
Yeah.
Bay.
So I hopped on a flight in Juneau about 7:00 in the morning. It was about an hour and a half flight to Anchorage, and then a connecting flight from Anchorage to Cold Bay. And I found out that I was very, very, very courageous to have my flight from Juneau to Anchorage to Cold Bay so close together. The outfitter about choked when he found out that I had about 20 minutes between my two flights because we're in Alaska, and especially coming from Southeast, there are definitely weather delays. So it was about another hour and a half flight once we finally got on the plane. Actually hopped on the plane, and the pipes were frozen, and so we all had to offload off of the plane. And they had to put heaters into the plane so that we could actually take off. But once we got in the air, it was about I think there was an hour and 20-minute flight.
Wow. So you get to Cold Bay. What's the population of Cold Bay?
I think I was talking with the guys there at the lodge, and they were saying that year round, there's only about 40 residents.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Very, very small town.
Was it a local lodge that you stayed at?
Yeah, so I did go with an outfitter. This is the first time I've ever went with and paid someone to take me hunting. But it was truly a once in a lifetime experience. I thought that they weren't going to keep this hunt open, and they actually did keep it open. So next year they still are having an emperor goose season. But I mean, it's still to the point that at any time it wouldn't surprise me if they did go ahead and pulled back the hunt and went back to it. So I did pay the little bit of money to go up there, stayed in a lodge, and went with an outfitter to go and get this done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice. If you do have this once in a lifetime opportunity, or 2 or 3 times in a lifetime, wherever it ends up being, sometimes it is better just pay the money. You go there,
absolutely,
you pay a lot of money to get out there. You want to make the most of it. I do that when I go to a new spot to even fly fish. Just having that one, like a half day with a guide to figure it out and make sure that you're maximizing that experience. Otherwise, you go out there and you try to DIY it, and then you come home without results. You're like, well, gosh, I got to go back. I wish it was done and out of my life, but I got to go back because I didn't fulfill it. And so it'd be better to go back a second time and fulfill it again than it is to have that haunting you for however long it takes to get back.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. I decided that I wanted to do this hunt probably about 6 or 7 months ago, because I realized I was like, I hit my residency in November. Big game's essentially over other than deer. I was like, hey, as a resident, I can go hunt emperor geese. That's something that I was going to do next year, but might as well make it happen this year. Got some PTO and go do that. Time trying to get to the point of actually getting on a plane in Anchorage to Cold Bay. It was almost stressful, like just the allure of this hunt. And I think I hyped it up a little more than I should have in my own mind. Just like, we gotta get this done. This is the hunt that I need to go on.
Mm-hmm. So what was the daily schedule like, and how did things shake out?
So we got there. I got off the plane. I went to the lodge, and then we immediately went out and went on a quick evening hunt. There wasn't much time left. We hopped out there. Just birds. There's a lot of birds up there just in general, but we saw a lot of emperors. And the tide really wasn't working with us. It's right there on the coast, so it's definitely just like it's southeast. The tide can make or break a hunt. It can make it really good. It can make it okay. So we went out, we set our decoys, got into some layout blinds, and we had some birds come in, but they were a little too far to shoot. So the first night was just kind of seeing some birds, and it was cool, just getting to see them and hear them. So the first night, that's kind of what that was. Went back, had dinner, woke back up the next morning, and went straight out to a spot that they like to go quite a bit, actually do most hunting, and it took more time to set decoys than it did to, actually get my emperor. It was humbled by it, and it's almost like it still hasn't happened. But it was, we got set up. They were dropping the boat off around the point. Took the guide about 15 minutes to get the boat dropped off and come back. And he got back about 5 minutes after legal light had started. And we had a couple birds that flew in. They were probably, 60, 70 yards out, so just too far to shoot. We watched them, and we watched tons of harlequin. There were a lot of harlequin in this spot, and they weren't even flying in. They were actually the tide was incoming, and it was coming pretty quick. So you could just see the current going into the lagoon. And we probably watched 20 or 30 harlequin just sitting in the current, just floating past our decoys. And we were actually watching a drake and a hen fly, and I was like, hey, look, there's a cool looking drake. And then all of a sudden we just hear a goose honk right to our left. And we look over, and there's 3 emperors that are like over our decoys. And I was fumbling with my gun. I thought I had my safety off, but I wasn't sure. And I threw my gun up to shoot, but I didn't pull the trigger because I just wanted to make sure that everything was right, because you don't want to screw up and accidentally shoot 2 of these birds. Otherwise, your emperor goose hunt is over, and there's going to be a call to the state troopers, and that's not something that we wanted. So I was I went real high and like, oh, cool, there's birds. And then I hit a real low of, oh, crap, I just screwed that up. It's probably not going to be my only chance, but it very well could be. And those birds swung out a little bit, and then they hooked right back in. And what the outfitters were telling me is when you're shooting an emperor, they said, we want singles and doubles, to come in. Those are the best birds to shoot. You don't want big flocks to come in. They said if it is a flock of over 2 or 3 birds, just pick one bird, focus on that one bird, the biggest, widest head. That's the way that they can tell what the most mature bird is. And so these 3 hooked back in, and the lead bird was the head was just significantly wider. I just looked at it and like, that looks like it's got a baseball for a head. And so I was able to get a shot, and it was about a 25-yard shot. So a very, very close shot. And I shot, and the bird didn't fall. And so I went from, high to low, high again shooting, to how did I miss? And I was just thinking to myself, there's no way that I missed this shot. And the birds went back out, and I kept following the bird that I shot. I only took one shot because I didn't know if I'd hit it or not. And then all of a sudden the bird just falls dead.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
And it was just such a rush of emotions of, like I was saying, high, low, and then all of a sudden I'm staring at this bird that I have been dreaming of for a few years now. And it's there, and I'm running out trying to get it. The current's taking it. And so outfitter had to run back and grab the boat. And then that was a long wait for that boat to come back because there were seals and eagles around. And I was so worried.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. That's sweet. Do they make the same sort of like noise? Is it similar to a regular goose, or what's the difference?
So yeah, they I actually got quite a bit of video of just listening to birds. They are very, very vocal, just like any other goose. But the best way to explain it is they sound just like a snow goose, but then they also can kind of sound like a speckle belly too.
Mm. Yeah, another thing that I've learned about this is I just figured that kind of goose for someone who's never waterfowl hunted before, you're just like, oh, it's just this is a duck, this is a goose. But then you look at the different mannerisms, the different sounds, the different size, and it is pretty fun to just see all those different elements to it. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's easy to get into.
And that's when you see someone going from, hunting ducks to being a waterfowl hunter. There's the 41 North American waterfowl species. Most people don't know half of them. There's a lot of guys that are just casual. I'll go out 2 or 3 times with buddies. And then you've got these guys that, are grinding it for 30, 40 days a season. That's almost, all season long. And you start to go down a rabbit hole once you start getting too much into it. And it's just like, holy cow, this isn't just shooting a mallard. This isn't just shooting a Canada goose. It becomes so much more. And then you spend a lot of money.
Well, that was, we were talking earlier about the harlequin, and I took my first harlequin before I got my first mallard. And mallard seems like the just most ubiquitous, your starter, your novice duck. But I hadn't got one until last week or 2 weeks ago. And I was so stoked for that because that was kind of the first one I should have got, I guess. But,
absolutely, yeah.
If you don't know any better, it can be really exciting. And then you can understand and see what has the most value and then why, so you can really appreciate it. So I'm getting to that appreciation mode. And it's just cool. You live in an area where it's a lot more conducive to, becoming or getting to that next step because there's so many opportunities here. And
absolutely. It's a stepping stone that you have up here that you don't get other places. And it's kind of funny that you mention it, that like, you're like going for this and you almost want this specific bird, this specific species, and you feel like you got to work for it. This trip was a little different for me because this was probably the first time that I've actually went waterfowl hunting, that the goal wasn't just to shoot a lot of birds. I mean, there were specific species that I was going up for, and this very much was a experience hunt, a trophy hunt, if you will. But this was the first time that I ever watched harlequin, which is considered to be one of the most sought after ducks that there is, especially sea ducks. And I could have shot 30 of them this trip, and it was so strange to me that I could watch these birds decoy and just enjoy the moment of having that and not even needing to touch my gun.
Yeah, that's a thing that I've developed too. Sometimes it's just fun to watch them.
Absolutely.
And you become like a bird watcher, and then you don't have to. If you're so reliant on a huge body count, then you can end up being disappointed. One week you get a whole bunch and you get limits or whatever. The next week you only get one. But again,
Absolutely.
about being the novice, and you look around at other people and you become the hunter. It's kind of like a little bit a collection of all the influences that you have. And so if the first people that you come into contact with when it comes to duck hunting, they teach you what duck hunting is, it's just about tons of body count versus
Yeah.
appreciate what it is, appreciate the whole experience, and then be happy with getting out there, be happy with one or two. So
Yeah, when we got there, the first thing that the guides asked me is like, obviously, you're here for the emperor goose, but what are the next? What's next? Because they're pretty confident. They were 100% on emperor goose hunting, and I can see why. I wouldn't say that it was easy, but you can definitely tell that the birds aren't pressured. And so it was just like, well, what do you want next? And so I named off the next things that I wanted, just because I am trying to get the 41 North American waterfowl species. And that is a great opportunity. Cold Bay has opportunities at every single sea duck that there is in North America. They don't get a lot of the surf scoters, and they very rarely get king eiders. But I was able to take every single sea duck species up there, other than surf scoters and a king eider. But I did see a Drake king eider my last morning, and I didn't realize what it was until it was too late. And it was just cool to see it, a mature Drake.
What's the difference between a pressured duck or goose and non-pressured? I've when I've been going out, I'm so paranoid because I've had some widgeon that are just like they're about ready to land, or like they circle and then they take off. Same thing with mallard. And so, am I moving too much? Should I not even blink? How careful do you have to be with ducks, geese that are in areas that might be pressured versus somewhere like that where they don't get pressured at all?
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of break down that question into a couple different parts. Pressured birds, there's a lot of waterfowl opportunity. There's a lot of area, but I've noticed there aren't a lot of hunters. Especially if you get out on your boat, you're potentially hunting birds that might not have ever seen a person while hunting, or they've seen hundreds of spreads in their migration. It varies so much. But even more so, I've noticed that puddle ducks like widgeons, mallards, geese, all that, they are way, way, way more wary than sea ducks. Sea ducks are almost, I wouldn't say stupid, but they're kind of dumb, and they decoy a lot easier. You definitely don't have to hide nearly as much. But like with widgeon and, mallards, pintails, puddle ducks like that, back home in Utah, we hunt a lot of local pressured birds that, could see 30 hunters a year. And your hide is a huge thing. Your spread can make or break it too. Do I want to throw a lot of decoys? Do I want to throw a few decoys? Do I call? Do I not call? How's the weather working for me? Where's the wind blowing? Catch them in the morning flight, catch them in the evening flight. That's what's going through my mind whenever I'm hunting, puddle ducks or higher pressured birds. When I'm going sea duck hunting, I could be sitting on the back of a boat with 3 dozen decoys out the back of a boat. And as long as I'm not out there flapping my arms around, a lot of these birds decoy, or they at least give you a close enough shot that you're putting effective shots on birds. We've actually had where we're picking up birds with a boat, and sea ducks are landing 10 to 15 feet away from this boat that's got its motor running, so it's a different atmosphere. But, up here I've hunted some mallards, and they definitely don't seem to be nearly as pressured as they would back home. Not that they're dumb birds by any means. You still have to make sure that you've got a good hide, that you're not moving. And like you were saying, sometimes I feel like I can't even blink or a bird will see it. And that's definitely between, are they a local bird or are they a migrator? I've noticed migrators are generally easier to get to decoy because they're moving and they're looking for strength in numbers, and they're just looking to move through. Whereas a local bird, this is their home, this is their stomping grounds. They kind of know what to expect.
Gotcha. Makes sense. sight is obviously their best sense. Is their hearing just as keen, or is it secondary, or what's on for
It's
them?
definitely like a secondary response, if I had to say so. I did a lot of jump shooting back home, and it's crazy how that they can't see you, but you can just barely see them. And if you make a twig snap, where there's generally always one bird that is the sentry bird, has its head up high, and it's constantly scanning, and they, I definitely think they can hear a lot better than most people think that they can.
I, I jump shot that mallard 2 weeks ago, and I was crawling for about 20 yards because I saw where they were at the other side of this little cove. And so I ducked into the woods, went all the way around to the last little bit as I was heading to like the little tip of the cove. I was belly crawling because there were a couple of times on both widgeon and mallards I tried to sneak through the woods, and there was a snap, or you get right on the edge. And if there was a window to shoot a rifle through it, so if it was a deer out on the beach, that'd be fine. But there's no way in heck anything is going to clear. And so you have to get down almost on the beach and then clear of the trees that hang over. And so I was crawling, and then slowly stood up and then just stepped quickly outside. And then that's when they took off, and then I was able to get one. But man, it was full on commando. It was crawl. It was belly crawl. It was pretty fun, pretty different. But man, it seemed like had I not done exactly that, there was no chance, and they were going to take off. But
jump shooting is an art. It's you either you know how to do it or you get lucky, and it's usually the latter of the two. I know that feeling all too well. Of you get so close, you've spent 20-30 minutes because these birds are here, and then you get to that edge, and it's like, oh crap, these birds are a little further than they looked from when I first saw them. And then you hit to where there's no cover, and flat out, I just run at them a lot of times because they already know you're there. You just got to close as much distance as you can when you're jump shooting.
Mm. I've found that, well, not found, but I've learned, as everybody else eventually learns, that diver ducks are very, very hardy. And I first thought that the reason why you don't shoot ducks on the water is because it's not sporting, but also that the wings cover the vitals.
That they have armor, yes,
underneath the water, that the shot's not really going to get there. So it's just as much, it's not a good shot as it is, not sporting. So that was something that was interesting. Are diver ducks more tough than like a mallard puddle duck?
Absolutely. I would say that divers are tougher birds. The main thing is with any bird is, know your limits of how far you can shoot, and then know your loads. I would say that the strongest before this hunt up to Cold Bay, I would say without a doubt that goldeneye are the toughest birds ever. I have watched feathers blow off of birds, and I can watch them for another mile. They're just flying like nothing happened because they're so thick. They've got fat on them. The big thing is, especially later season birds, they start getting a full plume. And once they have all that plumage, it might as well be armor. If they're not 20-30 yards away and you're not breaking a wing or hitting them in the head, good luck.
Yeah. I winged one actually yesterday with some friends. And so like it was swimming away, but it couldn't dive. I just I felt just as bad for that as I have, you shoot far back or gut shoot a deer. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is not how it's supposed to go. So you finish it off, but for those minutes, the thing is suffering. You just feel terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the name of the game is you will lose birds but the thing is, you got to feel somewhat of a remorse because as at least when I'm hunting, I'm trying to be as effective and ethical as I can be. Sometimes, you're shooting a scattergun that's throwing a lot of BBs into the air. It's a probability game of where's this specific BB gonna hit, how many BBs you're gonna hit, and how many birds were in that spread. It depends on what choke you're using, of how wide your spread is, how tight your shot string is. We shot So I wanted to go out to try to kill some brant while we were up in Cold Bay, and we got up there, and there's only a 2 brant limit. And we set decoys up, and once again, this was a hunt that took longer to set decoys than it was to actually take some birds. I had a flock of about 80 birds coming about 7 or 8 minutes into legal light, and they came through, and it's only a 2 bird limit. So I was definitely trying to just, pick birds so that I wasn't flock shooting and dropping more than one. But I took one shot and 2 birds fell. And it was like, well, my limit's there. And luckily, no other birds were hit, and the 2 just were deader than dead. And so it happens, but it's definitely not something you want to intentionally do. And that's where that, water swatting too. A lot of people don't like doing that when they're on the water. I'm fine with it as long as they're close and that you can get some pellets into their head. You definitely don't want to be aiming for their body. One BB to the head, and it's very effective.
Yeah, I knew intellectually going in that there's always a possibility that you could have, something wounded or things don't go right. It doesn't matter if it's archery or, rifle hunting or anything. There's always something that can go wrong. There's always, so it's definitely, it's the same, even though it's a smaller animal, you still feel really bad, but making that ethical thing, making sure you have a good shot and then taking care of it. That's
and it's hard because sometimes you've been waiting for these birds to, this might be the only flock of birds that you see all day. And you kind of have to guess that it's a guessing game of, do I shoot this pass or do I wait for them to circle through one more time? Is this as close as they're going to get? So I don't want to be sky busting and shooting birds that are way high up, because you can and you will hit birds. I've seen guys who, are hunting the same areas that I am, and I see the birds that they're shooting at, and they're not even close. Then you follow those birds, and then about a quarter mile out, you all of a sudden just see a bird tip over dead. Steel doesn't carry nearly as well as like lead does, or tungsten or bismuth, and so a lot of these times you're poking holes straight through birds, and they fly off and die. And so that's why you definitely have to kind of, if you have doubts, don't shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how often are you letting birds fly by? I feel lucky if I get any sort of opportunity. So is that like when you were down in Utah and you get these massive flocks that have kind of congealed, and so you have just a ton of birds? Or I'm looking at, if I'm seeing 6 to 12, I'm like cross-eyed with excitement almost. Have you found up in the Juneau area that you're getting a lot of opportunities so you can't afford to pass, or should you really try to make the most out of every good opportunity you get?
On sea ducks, you can afford to pass, but when I'm hunting puddle ducks, it's kind of, you do have to make do with what shots you get. You can wait all day for the picture perfect bird to come decoy into your spread, wingtips cupped, ready to die, more or less. Like, they do everything right. Very rarely do you get that all the time. So take that when it's there. That's what you're going for. But a lot of times, even when I was sea duck hunting up in Cold Bay, it's just like the decoys got the birds close enough that they took a look, and that was it. So you've got to kind of gauge, like, is this a shot that I think I can hit this bird and take it down? And so a lot of, probably the majority of my duck shooting, it's not really pass over shots, but it's pass bys as they're scooting close enough to the decoys to give it a look, but they're not interested. So you kind of learn your own capabilities and your specific load and your specific gun with its choke on how it shoots.
Gotcha. So where does Cold Bay rank as far as unique experiences? I mean, I'm sure it's probably near the top, if not the top. It could be a stupid question, but just as far as sheer beauty and isolation and everything you're looking for in an adventure, where was it?
That was a pure, and I got extremely lucky. Like, the outfitter said that I got more experiences in 3 days than most people do in a week, just because of the weather that I had. I had absolute glass bluebird days, which normally you don't want the bluebird days, but there's just so many birds up there that you couldn't go out and not have opportunities. I mean, like I was saying, I shot all but 2 species of the sea ducks up there, and it was I could not have asked for anything more than what I got, and I got more than I expected. It was truly a waterfowl dream while I was there. We were going out. We were in layout boats and sitting out in the middle of the ocean in a layout boat with 36 decoys out, just watching birds fly by all day long. And we actually, on the second day where I actually got the majority of the species, we were able to we were no longer in Cold Bay. We went out on a pretty good boat ride, and we actually were out in the Gulf of Alaska. And we were out there in a 2-man layout blind with a bunch of decoys. And the goal was to shoot, as many species as we could, but we were really going for Pacific eiders, which the Pacific eider, there's a few different subspecies of the common eider, which is the Pacific is a common eider, but the Pacific eider is the biggest bird in North America, or not biggest bird, but biggest duck in North America. And holy cow, that for sure is the toughest bird I have ever shot. It was, we ended up I went up there. I was supposed to go with some buddies, but unfortunately, due to COVID and other complications, the one buddy who was supposed to be coming with me wasn't able to fly due to restrictions. And so I went up there by myself. I told the guides that I was fine with them hunting with me, where it's just one guy. So we were kind of just out there to try to get as many Pacifics as we can. They were saying that most people think that the king eider is the hardest bird to get on and kill. And that's true to a point, just because you have to go to St. Paul to be able to get a definitive that, hey, you're going to be able to get this bird if you go to St. Paul and St. Paul only. But they're saying that to actually get on consistently and get to, decoy and get close enough and to even see him sometimes is the Pacific eider, is the unicorn of North American waterfowl is what they were calling it. And we ended up taking 7 out of between 3 of us. We ended up taking 7 Pacifics, and out of all those birds, every single one of them had to take multiple shots other than the last 2 birds that came in. They decoyed pretty well. They weren't decoying, but they were close. And those were the only birds that we were able to shoot once. They fell to the water dead. The other ones, it was you shot, you stood up, or as they're falling out of the sky, you're shooting them again and again and again. Wow. And then the boat comes and picks them up. They are tough birds. Their plumage is so thick. They're such big birds. They have specific shells that they like to use for Pacifics. They're called TSS, and they come out to be $5 a shot.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So if you're planning on going for Pacific eiders, do not cheapen out on shells. Get a nice bismuth or tungsten shell.
Wow. Huh. So what about, you're talking about toughest bird. What about the bird that you like to eat the most? That mallard, it was the first time I'd ever roasted a duck, left the skin on, and it was pretty good. I overcooked it a little bit, but I thought, man, I'm really excited to roast another mallard if I get the chance again. So what's your favorite way to cook it, and then favorite duck to eat?
Yeah. Well, really the big thing is just not overcooking it. I don't think, most of the time people say, teal and mallard are the best eating ducks. Puddle ducks more so than divers, which sea ducks are considered a diver species. But like I've said on the previous podcasts with you, I've eaten surf scoter, which are supposed to be the worst tasting duck that there is, and I loved them. Mm-hmm. And the big thing is just do not overcook them. Leave them to a rare to a medium rare, and season however you want. We went out a few weeks before I headed out to Cold Bay with my buddy, and his roommate has never duck hunted before. Went out with us. He's never eaten duck, and he shot a surf scoter, and we had our little propane grill on the boat that we had just cooked some bacon up on, and I asked him if he wanted to see what duck tastes like, and he's like, sure. And I told him, keep in mind, they consider this to be the worst tasting duck. But I'll let you decide. And so I just he shot a bird. We picked it up, got it into the boat, and I immediately breasted it out. and it went straight onto the pan that had a little bit of bacon grease on it, more or less just to keep it from sticking. And I cooked it to just shy of like medium rare. We put no salt, no pepper, nothing on it, just the straight off of the bird. And all three of us had pieces of it, and it was phenomenal. It was great. It's something that I would hunt strictly just to eat.
Yeah, I found that too. It was not only easy to breast, which made it nice, but it did taste really good, and I didn't feel like I was, like it was good for a diver duck. It felt like it was good food for good food.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've never actually kept track of which bird's a mallard, which bird's a diver, which bird is which, and sat down and tried to decide which one I prefer. Usually all the duck gets thrown into the same bag, processed the same thing, and it all tastes the same. But I've thought about it. I kind of want to try, a sea duck, a diver duck, and a puddle duck, and I've wanted to do them side by side, do the exact same thing, cook the exact same way, and see if there truly is a difference, because I haven't noticed it in how much waterfowl I've eaten.
Yeah. I was, again, you don't really know what to ask until you're involved in stuff, and then as things happen, then you think, oh, I need to ask about this. You don't know what questions to ask. Like, that's the starting point that you're at. So that's what I have more questions the more that I get into it, which is pretty sweet. But it's nice to have some sort of like a foundation now, and getting that first roasted duck out of the way. But that was cool, man. You go to places and you order duck, and it's like some sophisticated, expensive, almost pretentious order. But it was cool to be able to roast the duck and keep the skin on like you're supposed to. Too bad I overcooked it, which would disgraceful, I guess. But I still ate it, man. It was good. I'm pretty excited for that going forward. Just need more opportunities at mallards.
Yeah, I haven't done too much with skin on. I've heard it makes all the difference in the world, but it's kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I like what I'm doing now, and plucking a bird, oh man, that can be a chore after you've shot a limit of birds if you pluck them all. So we usually just go with the breasting out method. It gets most of the meat. You lose a little bit of meat on the legs, but we're still utilizing the bird. And I think it's more just I'm lazy and don't want to do 20 birds and pluck them.
Yeah, that's a luxury. That's a problem I don't have yet. I'm coming on a 2-bird day. I'm stoked, and so
yeah, there you go.
A couple of buddies and I think we came home with 7 or 8. That was our best day. But we were sitting on this rock and we were yakking it up, just having a good time. And so, we had a couple opportunities and got a couple scoters, and so that was pretty fun. But yeah, I breasted and they kind of watched. But yeah, it was kind of fun. But 7 birds was about the limit for the day. I was getting kind of tired of it, so I can't imagine doing 20 or so. That'd be a long haul.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is I think why I enjoy waterfowl the most isn't the aspect of, being out there shooting birds. It's some of my best hunting memories and the best laughs that I've had with my friends is duck hunting. Some of the worst duck days that we've had are some of the most memorable hunts that we've ever had. And it just allows us to, you're not sitting there in the elk woods or the deer woods, not talking because you got to be so quiet. You're out there, you're messing around outside of your blind, and all of a sudden there's ducks flying around. You're like, oh crap, well maybe we should actually start hunting and stop just being kids and hanging out.
Yeah, for sure. That's be able to drink the coffee, talk at like almost normal levels. It's just such a different thing, and that is a lot of fun. Wow.
Absolutely.
So what do you got for a closer here, man? Kept you on for a little bit. What do you got? Close it up.
To close it up, come to Alaska, hunt birds. It is so fun. If any of you are guys from the lower 48 listening to this and you've contemplated, whether it's outfitted or DIY, just do it. There's some cool experiences. A lot of it you do have to have someone with a boat or something to do, but buy tags, buy experiences, and just get out there and hunt, whether it's in your backyard or whether it's in the Aleutian chains out in Alaska. enjoy it and just get out there and do as much as you can all season long.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you being on here again. Take care and enjoy a winter as a resident.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate you letting me come on.
Take care, man.
You as well.